Are you aware of what Illinois is as a football team this year? They're a good one. I don't know that they're a great one. I know that they're a good one. So I was thinking about the Illini, who lost 21-7 against Penn State on the road. I think Penn State's a really good football team. I think Michigan should be grateful they don't play Penn State this year, or that's a game I'd pick Michigan to lose. But then I think about it, and I say, well, could they lose to Illinois? Is this possible? Is it feasible? What Illinois did, this is what I call a quality loss. Or for my OG listeners from way, way back in the day, on the Monday morning win-loss meter on a 5-point scale, this would be a lean win feeling for Illinois. You went to Penn State, you lose 21-7. I thought Illinois would cover. Doesn't mean I'm not impressed by the fact that they did. I think Illinois is a good football team. And if you're a Michigan fan, looking at the schedule, I will get to Michigan more in just a moment because I wasn't particularly concerned after the Minnesota game, which, again, I'll get to that in just a sec. As you look at the Wolverines schedule, there are games that get highlighted, like this week. They're an underdog against Washington. Oh, Vegas is just messing with my head with that one. Then they have a bye. The game's in Seattle, by the way. Then they have a bye, and then they are at Illinois. They are at Illinois. So remember, Illinois played a competitive football game with Penn State on the road. Do you think that Penn State is capable of beating Michigan? If you do, you might want to think about the possibility of Illinois. I don't know that I'm there yet. I'm just saying that Penn State game showed me plenty. No, their offense wasn't great. Guess what? Penn State has got a capable defense. I think Tom Allen's starting to round things into form on that side of the football after a couple of bumpy moments, but overall, Penn State's been a good team. Yeah, the Bowling Green game was bad, but they haven't lost yet. Drew Eiler looks pretty good. Their coordinator hires, I think, are working out. That Penn State defense, or the Illinois defense, well, I know the Penn State defense is good, but the Illinois defense is pretty capable. It's pretty capable. Is Michigan going to blow the doors off you? Or is that going to be a slugfest sort of game? I just keep your eye. Keep your eye on Bret Bielema and the Illini. October 19th in Champaign. That's not at the big house. That's on the road. Michigan's coming off a bye. Have to like that if you're the Wolverines, but I'm just saying. Just watch out for the Illini. Very curious to see what the point spread will be on that game when the time arrives. Speaking of Michigan, 27-24, they beat Minnesota. There was the whole onside kick deal, and there was this, and there was that, and Michigan was a better team. I was surprised the line was under 10. It eventually jumped over 10 to 10.5, which is where I felt it should have been, in the 10.5, 11 range. Minnesota ends up covering that number. Good for the Golden Gophers, I guess. I really don't know what the future of Minnesota Golden Gophers football is with PJ Fleck at the helm. I mean, they got to a bowl game last year at 5-7. They won it. It kind of feels like they're all destined for a 5-6 win season again this year. But this is one of those games that Michigan got up big, and then all of a sudden Minnesota finds a second wind. I think a couple things can happen when a team that is better than the other team, which Michigan clearly is, gets a big lead. A couple things can happen that allow for this sorts of nervy situation. Number one, Michigan does not have, this maybe is number one, this is number three. This is just the first thing I'll go to. But number one, Michigan doesn't have the sort of offense that is going to pull away. You'll always be able to hang around statistically in that you're not trailing by 30 to 40 points. This Michigan offense isn't going to do that. Number two, you can get a little complacent and know, yeah, we're better than these guys. Yeah, this game is kind of over. And I don't think that was a big thing. And it was more about the third thing. Like, when you get up big as defensive coordinator, if you Wink Martindale, are you going to be as aggressive? Are you going? No, you're going to not allow the big play. So Michigan wins this game. It's a lot closer than the final score indicated. That was my big takeaway was, hey, Michigan was a significantly better team. I don't think less of the Wolverines, who right now I think go into Seattle and win the football game. Crazy line shift, by the way, which I'll get back to in just a moment. I think they go into Seattle and win the football game. I don't view Michigan differently because Minnesota staged a comeback and almost won the football game. I was always pretty confident that Michigan was going to win. But before the season, Michigan was an 8.5 point. Actually, they opened at 11.5, which I thought was too many. They opened as an 11.5-point favorite at Washington. And that line, according to our friends at FanDuel, is now to Washington minus 2.5 is pretty crazy. The last time there was that big of a movement in a line, let me see if I can think of one. Where have I seen that before? Oh, that's right. Michigan was minus 8.5 against USC, plus 4.5 by kickoff, plus 5.5 at some books, and what do you know? Michigan wins the game outright. I think they probably do that again here. That's not my official prediction. That's just kind of my sense on the Wolverines, who I think are finding themselves as the season has gone on. If they played Texas again today, they'd lose the football game no matter where it was played. It'd be more competitive, is all I would say. Clemson 40, Stanford 14. Now, Ashton Daniels got hurt in this one. Turns out it wasn't going to matter. Clemson is a good football team. They are not on the same level as Georgia. We saw that in week 1. Can teams improve? Yes, they absolutely can. The last time Georgia beat a team like that in week 1 in Atlanta in a quote-unquote neutral site game was Oregon in 2022, who went on to be a 9-3 team. I think Clemson's better than that Oregon team. I don't know that Clemson is elevating themselves. Like, don't get sucked into Clemson is having great offensive games and they're playing, non-SEC opponents, and therefore Clemson is much, much better than what they were in the first week. Georgia and Clemson play. I'm still picking Georgia to win by double digits, and they probably do. But Clemson, to their credit, in the 3 games since that Georgia outburst by the Bulldogs, of course, they've put up 66, 59, and 40 points. So Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik are in a much better rhythm than what they were a season ago. And as I talked about on yesterday's show, 2-horse race in the ACC. I don't buy Louisville yet. I don't know who else there is to buy. Duke? Am I supposed to buy Duke? They're an underdog this week against Georgia Tech. For a reason. Georgia Tech might be a better football team, even though Duke has the better record. So I think Clemson is improving. I'm not going to get sucked into, well, they could go on, win the national championship. Like, no. If you lost 34-3 against Georgia, you're not in that sort of class. So I'm not completely flipping the script on Clemson. I'm just giving them credit to where they have established themselves very clearly in my mind as the number 2 team in the ACC, and it might be 1A, 1B. It might be 1A, 1B with the Hurricanes and the Tigers. Last game that I didn't get to on yesterday's show, but wanted to today. Indiana, 42-28 over Maryland. Speaking of games that Michigan has to go on the road to play, Curt Cignetti has the boys in Bloomington 5-0 for the first time literally in my entire life. Literally in my entire life. I believe the year was 1970. I don't know. One of those presidents that I read about in history class that has not been amongst the living presidents for quite some time. 5-0, number 23 in all the land. That's just impressive. That's all it is. It's impressive. This is a quick turnaround. This is way quicker than anyone expected. I don't know if they're the same team as Illinois, because have they played a great team yet? No. Does that mean they're not a good football team? Also no. You can say, hey, they're a good football team. I just don't know if they're great yet. That's kind of how I feel with Illinois, but I'm more impressed with the Illini, who have a loss because they went to Penn State and, quite frankly, played a pretty darn good football game. Not perfect, but played well defensively. Offense couldn't quite get going. Tough environment against a really, really good college football playoff caliber team in Penn State. But watch for Indiana, 42-28 over Maryland. Curtis Rourke playing some darn good football. Darn good football. Curt Cignetti is texting the students on campus saying, hey, come to the game. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, I imagine he'll send out another text regardless of what their record is by the time the Michigan game rolls around. By the way, Indiana has about a 38% chance, according to ESPN, to make the college football playoff and one of the most favorable schedules in all of the Power 4. Rutgers is 4-0. They go to Nebraska this week, who's 4-1, got a bounce-back win. I just want you to be aware of that football game. That's all. Just keep that one on your radar. One of my favorite bets before the season was Nebraska over 7.5. Still feeling pretty good about that. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.